Tyler Greer picked up the white belt off the rack, snapped it once between his fists, and smiled. Then he crouched down to eye level with the 10-year-old boy standing in front of him. The room was full. 200 parents, phones up, everyone watching. Tyler's voice was low, almost gentle, the kind of gentle that cuts deeper than a shout. "What's your name, son?" "Marcus. Marcus." He repeated it slowly like he was tasting it. "Well, Marcus, I've been doing this 20 years. And in 20 years, I've never once seen a little black boy step on my mat and not cry when I put him down. So here's my advice." He leaned in another inch. "Save yourself the embarrassment. Cry now, before we start." The crowd laughed. Marcus didn't. Tyler stood up, rolled his neck, glanced back at his front desk staff with a grin. "Somebody tell his daddy to have the car running. This won't take long." More laughter. Louder this time. Then he looked back down at Marcus one final time and his smile disappeared completely. "Kids like you don't belong on a mat like this. You belong in the bleachers watching kids like mine win." He turned his back on the boy before the sentence was even finished. 22 seconds later, Marcus was on the mat. The crowd was cheering. Tyler had his arms raised. Nobody looked at what was on Marcus's face. They should have. Because 4 years later in that same gym, Marcus Webb came back. 13 seconds. That's all it took. And what happened after those 13 seconds burned Tyler Greer's entire world to the ground. Stay with me, this story will make your blood boil before it sets your heart on fire. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. And if you believe no child should ever be spoken to like that, subscribe. Let's get into it. Greensboro. North Carolina sits in the middle of the state like a city that never decided what it wanted to be. Not quite Charlotte. Not quite Raleigh. Just Greensboro, wide streets, old neighborhoods, a downtown that tried to reinvent itself every decade and never quite finished the job. Damon Webb had lived there his whole life. 38 years old, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who fixed things with his hands, because that was what his father taught him and his father's father before that. He worked HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning for a mid-size contractor out of High Point. Crawl spaces in August. Rooftops in January. 12-hour days that left grease under his fingernails no matter how hard he scrubbed. He drove a 2014 Ford F-150 with 140,000 miles on it, and a crack in the dashboard he kept meaning to fix. He packed his own lunch every morning. He was home by 6 when the job allowed it. Sandra Webb taught 3rd grade at Lindley Elementary, 12 minutes from their house on Ashboro Street. She had been teaching for 9 years. Her classroom had a reading corner with a beanbag chair she bought herself, and a poster on the wall that said, "Every child is a story waiting to be told." She believed it, not as a slogan, as a fact. They were not wealthy. They were not struggling. They were exactly in the middle, holding the line every month, grateful for what they had, and careful not to pretend it was more. Marcus was their only child. He came into the world on a Tuesday morning in October, 7 pounds 4 ounces, with his father's broad forehead and his mother's quiet eyes. From the beginning, he was a still child, not sad still. He watched things before he touched them. He listened before he spoke. His kindergarten teacher told Sandra at the first parent conference, "Marcus processes everything twice before he acts. That's not shyness, that's intelligence." By age 8, Marcus had read every book in his classroom's reading corner and was working through the school library shelf by shelf. He loved superheroes not for the powers, but for the stories underneath the powers. The reason behind the cape. He told his father once, sitting at the kitchen table with a comic spread open in front of him. "The best heroes aren't the strongest ones, Dad. They're the ones who keep going when everything says stop." Damon had written that down on a notepad in the kitchen drawer. He still had it. The jiu-jitsu came from a YouTube rabbit hole on a rainy Saturday afternoon when Marcus was 9. He had been watching wrestling highlights. Damon had been a high school wrestler, nothing serious, just enough to teach his son a few basics, when the algorithm served him a clip of a small man submitting a much larger opponent, using nothing but leverage and timing. Marcus watched it 4 times in a row. Then he called his father into the room. "Dad, is that real?" Damon watched the clip. "That's jiu-jitsu. Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Can I learn it?" Damon had looked at his son's face in that moment, the absolute focused hunger in his eyes, and known there was only one answer. "Let me find you a gym." He found Coach Ray Sutton through a flyer on the bulletin board at their church. Handwritten, not printed. A phone number and 4 words, real training, real people. Damon called the number that same evening. Ray Sutton was 67 years old. He had been training Brazilian jiu-jitsu since 1978, back when most Americans had never heard the word. He had earned his Coral Belt 6th degree black belt under a direct student of the Gracie family, and he had the paperwork to prove every promotion, every year, every mat hour. He ran his gym out of the basement of Greater Faith Baptist Church on Elm Street. No mirrors, no logo merchandise, no Instagram account. Just mats, a timer bolted to the wall, and 46 years of knowledge living in his hands. He charged $60 a month. If a family couldn't afford $60, he charged what they could afford. If they couldn't afford anything, he charged nothing and said nothing about it. When Damon brought Marcus in for the first session, Sutton watched the boy for 10 minutes without saying a word. Just watched him move, watched how he fell, watched how he got up. Then he looked at Damon. "That boy moves like water. Is that good?" "It's the best thing I can tell you." Marcus trained every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Within 3 months, he had earned his first stripe on his white belt. Within 6 months, Coach Sutton was using him to demonstrate techniques for older students. Not because Marcus was the strongest, he was one of the smallest kids in the class, but because when Sutton showed him something, once Marcus had it. Not the shape of it, the meaning of it. He made one close friend at the gym, Kevin Okafor, 15, a blue belt from a family that had moved to Greensboro from Lagos when Kevin was 4. Kevin was long-limbed and technically precise, the kind of training partner who made everyone around him better. He and Marcus drilled together every session, pushed each other without cruelty, competed without ego. Sutton called them his 2 best students and meant it equally. By the time Marcus turned 10, he had competed in 4 local tournaments and won 3. Small events, youth divisions, nothing that made the news. But on the mat, other coaches noticed. A purple belt instructor from Durham pulled Damon aside after one tournament and said, "Whoever's training your son, don't let him go anywhere else." Damon had smiled and said nothing. He didn't know yet that in 3 weeks, he would make one decision that would set everything in motion. He signed Marcus up for the Greer Academy Showcase. $40, online registration. A box to check at the bottom, participant agrees to exhibition format, under Greer Academy rules. Damon checked the box without reading the rules. He would think about that check mark for a long time afterward. If you drove down Battleground Avenue on a Wednesday evening, you could not miss Greer's Combat Academy. The sign was 12 feet wide, backlit in red and white, mounted above a glass storefront that had been professionally renovated 3 years ago at a cost of $140,000. Through the windows, you could see the main training floor, pristine blue mats, heavy bags along the wall, a trophy case running the full length of the reception area. The front desk had a flat-screen monitor showing a highlight reel of students competing and winning set to a driving instrumental soundtrack that played on a 4-minute loop. It looked like success. It was designed to look like success. Every square foot of it was a sales pitch. Tyler Greer had opened the academy 11 years ago, With a $60,000 small business loan, a rented space half the size of the current building, and a confidence that bordered on architecture solid, load-bearing, visible from a distance. He was 41 now, 6 feet even, the kind of physically imposing that photographs well. He wore his black belt in promotional photos the way other men wore watches as a statement about who he was and what he had earned. Except he hadn't earned it. Not the way the belt was supposed to be earned. In Brazilian jiu-jitsu, a black belt is not a milestone. It is a decade. A minimum of 10 years of consistent mat time, technical mastery, competition experience, and most critically promotion by a legitimate black belt with a verifiable lineage tracing back to the art's founders. The belt is not given, it is recognized. There is a difference. Tyler Greer had trained under a man named Hector Navarro, a jiu-jitsu instructor based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, whose own credentials had been disputed in the community for years. Tyler trained under Navarro for 11 months as a young man arriving as a white belt, leaving as a 2-stripe blue belt. Then he moved back to Greensboro, opened his gym, and within 2 years was calling himself a black belt on his website, his social media, and every piece of marketing he ever produced. No governing body had a record of the promotion. No lineage chart listed his name. When asked directly, Tyler said his records were private, that not everything in jiu-jitsu needed to be verified publicly, and that his results spoke for themselves. His followers accepted this. His students accepted this. Because Tyler Greer was an exceptional salesman, and in the age of social media, a confident story told well is more persuasive than a quiet truth told accurately. 90,000 Instagram followers, 17 corporate sponsors, youth programs funded through 2 separate county grants, weekend seminars at $175 a seat that sold out in hours. His slogan, "Champions aren't born. They're built here," was printed on every shirt, every bag, every water bottle in his merch line. Parents drove from 4 counties away to enroll their children. What those parents did not see was what happened behind the polished front desk. 3 black families had quietly withdrawn their children from Greer's academy in the past 14 months. None of them made noise about it. One mother, when asked by a neighbor why her son no longer trained there, said only, "That place isn't what it looks like." She did not elaborate. She did not want the trouble. The internal culture of the gym reflected Tyler Greer's internal worldview, which was that weakness deserved to be exposed, and that exposure was a form of teaching. Beginners were routinely smashed by upper belts in sparring and told it was for their development. Students who complained were publicly labeled soft. Students who quit were discussed disparagingly in team meetings as examples of the wrong mentality. For white students from middle-class families, this culture read as intensity, as elite standards, as the price of becoming a champion. For kids who looked like Marcus Webb, it read as something else entirely. Something older and harder to name, but immediately recognizable to anyone who had ever felt it. Tyler's 3 senior instructors had left the academy in the past 2 years. He had replaced them with younger, less experienced coaches who were easier to control and cheaper to pay. His head instructor, a 26-year-old purple belt named Jake Simmons, had been promoted to the position 8 months into his time at the academy. Jake was loyal and enthusiastic and did not ask questions. Behind the trophy case and the highlight reel and the 12-foot sign, the business was in trouble. Membership had dropped 22% over 18 months. The lease on the Battleground Avenue building had increased by $3,400 per month at renewal. Tyler had missed 2 equipment payments and was in informal negotiation with the bank about restructuring a line of credit. The monthly showcase events were not just community programming. They were recruitment drives. A carefully choreographed evening designed to put Greer's Academy students in the best possible light, attract new families, and generate social media content that Tyler could run as advertising. Every match on showcase night was seeded to produce the outcomes Tyler wanted. The format, buried in the registration fine print, gave the Academy discretion over match assignments. Tyler had read the fine print. Damon Webb had not. When Tyler saw Marcus Webb's name on the registration list for the upcoming showcase, a small black kid 9 years old, listed as a white belt from a gym nobody had heard of, he made a decision. He would handle that match himself, not because he felt threatened, because he saw an opportunity. A confident performance against an unknown kid from a nobody gym would generate exactly the kind of content his sagging membership numbers needed. Dominant, decisive, unchallengeable. He told Jake to put Marcus in the demonstration slot at the end of the evening. Then he went back to answering emails and didn't think about it again. He should have thought about it. The night of the showcase was a Friday in late March. Sandra had pressed Marcus's white gi that afternoon, folding the collar flat, running the iron along the sleeves twice. She tied his white belt herself, the way Damon had shown her flat knot, even ends, and stood back and looked at her son standing in the kitchen doorway in his uniform. "You nervous?" she asked. Marcus considered the question seriously, the way he considered everything. A little. But Coach Sutton says nerves mean you care. If you didn't care, you wouldn't feel anything. Sandra had smiled and kissed the top of his head. Coach Sutton's a smart man. Damon drove them to Battleground Avenue at 6:30. The parking lot was already full. Through the glass storefront, they could see the bleachers filling up, the mat cleared and cleaned to a shine, the trophy case lit from inside. A teenager in a Greer Academy polo was handing out programs at the door. Inside smelled like a gym, trying not to smell like a gym, mat cleaner, air freshener, something faintly competitive underneath it all. The bleachers held roughly 200 people. Families, mostly kids in academy uniforms, clustered together. Parents with phones already raised, a few local business owners, whose banners hung along the far wall. A DJ booth in the corner played something with a heavy bass that bounced off the high ceiling. Tyler Greer stood at the center of the mat, in his black G microphone, in hand, working the room the way a man works a room, when he has spent years learning exactly how to do it. Confident, easy, large in the space without trying to be. He welcomed families. He thanked sponsors. He talked about the Academy's vision, developing champions, building character, creating winners. The crowd responded warmly. Several parents were nodding. 2 were already filming him specifically, not the mat. The early matches went exactly as Tyler had designed them. His upper belts teenagers with 2 and 3 years of training were matched against beginners from visiting gyms. The matches were competitive enough to look legitimate and one-sided enough to look impressive. The crowd cheered every Greer Academy win. Tyler punctuated each one with a comment into the microphone. "That's what 6 months on this mat looks like, folks." And the crowd responded on cue. Damon sat in the 3rd row with Sandra beside him. Marcus sat between them, watching the matches with the stillness that was his nature, not bored, not anxious, just processing, filing away what he saw. The program listed his match as the final event of the evening. Exhibition demonstration. No further detail. When Tyler called his name, Damon felt the first flicker of something uncomfortable. Not alarm, just a question mark forming somewhere in the back of his mind. Marcus straightened his GI, and walked to the edge of the mat. He was small for 10, slight in the shoulders, not yet grown into his feet. In his white gi among the Greer Academy students in their dark uniforms, he looked exactly like what he was, a kid from a church basement gym who had never been to an event this size. The crowd barely registered him. Tyler walked to the center of the mat and took the microphone one more time. "For our final event tonight, we have a special demonstration. An open exhibition, the kind of real, unscripted jiu-jitsu that shows you what this art is actually about." He smiled at the crowd. "And I'll be handling this one personally." Murmurs. A few people sat up straighter. Damon's question mark sharpened. Tyler set the microphone on its stand, turned to Marcus, and walked toward him slowly. Then he stopped, crouched down, and brought his face to the boy's eye level. What happened next lasted no more than 15 seconds. But Sandra heard it. Damon heard it. 3 parents in the front row heard it. And a woman named Janelle Price sitting in the second row with her phone already recording because she was a journalist, and journalists record everything, captured every word. "What's your name, son?" "Marcus." "Marcus." A pause. A smile that had nothing warm in it. "I've been doing this 20 years. And in 20 years, I've never once seen a little black boy step on my mat and not cry when I put him down. So here's my advice. Save yourself the embarrassment. Cry now, before we start." The crowd laughed. Not all of them, but enough. Damon was on his feet before Sandra could reach for his arm. She caught him. "Damon," her voice was quiet but absolute. "Sit down. Watch your son." Damon sat. His hands were shaking. Marcus said nothing. He stepped onto the mat. He found his stance. Tyler stood up, rolled his neck, and glanced back at Jake Simmons at the front desk, with a grin that said this would be over in 20 seconds. "Somebody tell his daddy to have the car running," he said loud enough for the first 3 rows. "This won't take long." More laughter. Then Tyler turned back to Marcus, and his smile disappeared completely. "Kids like you don't belong on a mat like this," he said quietly, the words meant only for the boy. "You belong in the bleachers, watching kids like mine win." He turned his back before he finished the sentence. The match lasted 22 seconds. Tyler used a controlling hold that placed his forearm directly across the back of Marcus's neck, a technique explicitly prohibited in youth competition under NC Athletic Commission Guidelines, Section 4, Paragraph 7. Marcus had no answer for it. He was 10 years old and 103 pounds. Tyler outweighed him by 115 pounds. Marcus went to the mat. Tyler stood over him, arms raised. The crowd cheered. Tyler walked to the edge of the mat, picked up the microphone. "That, ladies and gentlemen, is what 20 years looks like." He laughed. No offense to the youngster. Then he crouched down one final time next to Marcus, who was still on the mat, still processing what had happened, and said in a voice that carried just far enough for Janelle Price's phone to catch it, "See, I told you not to cry, but you people always do." He stood up and walked away. Marcus lay on the mat for 3 full seconds. Then he got up. He did not cry. Not there. Not in front of 200 people and a DJ booth and a trophy case full of other people's names. He held it until the parking lot, until he was in the back seat of his father's truck, with the door closed and the windows up, and his mother's hand on his shoulder. Then it came out. Damon gripped the steering wheel with both hands and stared straight ahead at the lit-up sign above the gym door. He did not start the engine for a long time. That night when Marcus was asleep, Damon sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open and filed a formal complaint with the NC State Youth Athletics Commission. He typed carefully. He cited the specific rule. He attached Janelle Price's video, which she had already posted publicly, and the timestamp of the illegal hold. He hit submit at 11:47 p.m. The complaint was logged and assigned a case number. Then nothing happened for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of silence from the commission. Damon checked the complaint portal every morning before work. Same status. Case under review. No updates. No timeline. No name attached to the case. Just a number and a timestamp and the quiet, bureaucratic suggestion that someone somewhere was looking into it. He told himself to be patient. He was not a patient man by nature, but he had learned patience the way most working men learn it, through years of crawling into spaces that required you to slow down or break something. He waited. Tyler Greer did not wait. On a Tuesday morning, 43 days after the showcase, a video appeared on the Greer's Combat Academy Instagram account. No dramatic music, no title card. Just Tyler sitting at his desk in a gray Greer Academy pullover, speaking directly into the camera with the measured calm of a man who had rehearsed this enough times to make it sound unrehearsed. "I want to address something that's been heavy on my heart," he began. "A few weeks ago, after one of our showcase events, a parent came to my gym and made our staff, our students, and frankly, our families feel genuinely unsafe. I'm not going to name this individual because I don't believe in that. But I want to be honest with our community about what happened and why it matters." He went on for 4 minutes and 12 seconds. He spoke about the Academy's commitment to safety. He spoke about the difficulty of running a youth-focused program in a climate where anyone can make an accusation, and the accusation becomes the story. He spoke about his instructors. He spoke about the children. He never named Damon Webb. He didn't need to. His followers found Damon within 3 hours. Workplace Neighborhood Union, local number, a photograph pulled from a neighborhood association Facebook post from 2 years prior. The messages started arriving before noon. "Mind your own business. You're the problem, not him. Keep your thug kid home if he can't handle real training." Some were worse. The kind of messages that don't leave the screen when you put the phone down. The kind that follow you into sleep. Damon did not respond to any of them. He screenshotted every one and saved them to a folder he labeled "Evidence" with the date. But Tyler wasn't finished. On Thursday of that same week, Sandra Webb was called into the office of Principal Doreen Alvarez at Lindley Elementary. Sandra sat across from her principal in a chair she had sat in dozens of times for student conferences and curriculum meetings, a chair that had never felt the way it felt that morning. Principal Alvarez was a careful woman. She chose her words with the precision of someone who understood liability. "Sandra, I received a call yesterday from someone who identified themselves as a concerned parent in the community. They raised some concerns about, and I want to be careful here, about a situation involving your family and a local business owner." Sandra kept her face still. "What kind of concerns?" The caller suggested that you had been encouraging your son to use physical aggression against adults as a form of protest. That you had coached him to attend a community event with the intention of instigating a confrontation. The room was very quiet. "That is not true," Sandra said. Each word separate, precise. "I believe you," Principal Alvarez said immediately. "I want you to know that. But Sandra, your contract renewal is in 8 weeks. And the district has a sensitivity to anything that generates outside attention right now. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm just telling you what I was told and asking you to be aware." Sandra drove home that afternoon without turning on the radio. She sat in the driveway for 10 minutes before she went inside. She did not tell Damon that night. She did not want to add to what he was already carrying. She told him she had a headache and went to bed early and stared at the ceiling for 2 hours. The union complaint against Damon arrived by certified mail on Friday. It had been filed anonymously, citing conduct unbecoming of a union member based on aggressive and threatening behavior toward a community business owner. The complaint triggered an automatic review process, standard procedure, his union rep explained over the phone. "It almost certainly goes nowhere, but until it's resolved, you're on paid suspension. Maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4. 3 weeks without leaving the house at 7 in the morning. 3 weeks without the crawl spaces and the rooftops and the routine that held his days in shape." Damon sat at the kitchen table after the call and did not move for a long time. Marcus found him there when he came home from school. He set his backpack down, got a glass of water, and sat across from his father without being asked. "Dad?" "Yeah." "Is it because of me?" Damon looked at his son. 10 years old, still in his school clothes, watching his father with those quiet eyes that had always seen more than they let on. "None of this is because of you," Damon said. "You understand me, none of it." Marcus nodded, but he had already done the math. He was 10, not 5. He understood cause and effect. He understood that he had stepped onto a mat, and that stepping onto that mat had started something, and that the something had followed his family home. He stopped going to Coach Sutton's gym the following Tuesday, told his father he was tired. The Tuesday after, that same excuse. Then he just stopped saying anything, and Damon stopped asking, because asking felt like reopening something that needed time to close. But the empty spot on the mat on Tuesday nights did not go unnoticed. Coach Sutton ran a tight roster. He knew every student by the sound of their movement. He knew when someone was hurt, when someone was distracted, when someone had stopped showing up in their body even before they stopped showing up in person. After the second missed Tuesday, he called Damon. The phone rang 4 times. Damon picked up. Sutton didn't say hello. He said 4 words. "Bring him to me." Damon drove Marcus to the church basement on a Wednesday night. Neither of them spoke on the way there. The radio was off. The windows were fogged from the cold. Marcus sat in the passenger seat with his GI bag on his lap and his eyes on the road ahead. And Damon drove the way he drove when he was thinking about something he didn't have words for, yet both hands on the wheel, jaw set, going the speed limit exactly. Greater faith. Baptist Church on Elm Street was dark except for the basement windows, which glowed with that specific quality of light that only comes from fluorescent bulbs over pale mats. Damon parked, killed the engine, and sat for a moment. "You don't have to train tonight," he said. "You can just sit and watch." Marcus looked at him. "I didn't bring my gi to watch." He got out of the truck. Coach Sutton was already on the mat when they came down the stairs. He was moving through a solo drill, slow, methodical, the kind of movement that looks simple until you understand how much precision it requires. He didn't stop when they entered. He finished the sequence, stood, and looked at Marcus the way a doctor looks at a patient, not unkindly, but completely. "You're late," he said. "It's Wednesday," Marcus said. "We train Tuesdays and Thursdays." "You've been late since March." Marcus had no answer for that. Sutton pointed at the mat. Kevin was already there, stretching in the corner, and he looked up when Marcus came in and gave him a nod that said everything a 15-year-old says when he doesn't want to make something into a bigger deal than it already is. Marcus nodded back. He changed into his GI in the bathroom, tied his belt the way his mother had shown him, and walked back to the mat barefoot. The cold of the mat through his feet felt like something returning. Sutton paired them immediately. No warm-up speech, no acknowledgement of the weeks away. Just roll. They rolled for 25 minutes. The first 5 minutes were mechanical. Marcus was in his head thinking about technique instead of feeling it moving a half second behind himself. Kevin was patient. He didn't push. He let Marcus find the pace. Then something shifted. The way things shift on a mat when a body remembers what a mind has been trying to forget. A transition came back clean, a hip escape into a back take that Marcus had drilled so many times it lived in his muscle before it lived in his thought. He moved through it without deciding to. Kevin went with it, tapped, reset. They kept going. By the end of the round, Marcus was somewhere else entirely. Not in the showcase. Not in his father's truck with the engine off. Not in the kitchen listening through the bedroom wall. Just here, this mat, this grip, this breath, this moment. When Sutton called time, Marcus sat on the edge of the mat, breathing hard with sweat on his forehead. And for the first time in 6 weeks, the thing sitting on his chest was not quite as heavy. Sutton sat beside him. Not too close. He handed him a water bottle and waited until the breathing slowed. "How's it feel?" Marcus thought about it. Like it was still there. It's always there. You just stopped letting yourself use it. Sutton looked at him steadily. "You know what your problem is? I've been training for other people." Sutton blinked, slightly surprised. "Your father tell you that?" "No, I figured it out on the way here." A pause. Then Sutton almost smiled. "Start training for yourself. Everything else takes care of itself." Marcus was 14 now. 4 years had taken him from the small, slight boy in the white GI to something Coach Sutton had trouble finding the right word for. Not big Marcus was still lean, still compact, still the kind of athlete who would always be underestimated by people who measured ability in pounds. But technically, he had become something that didn't have a simple name: fluid, deceptive, patient in a way that felt predatory once the match started. His guard work was among the best Sutton had seen at any age. His submissions were clean and deep and arrived without warning. Sutton had told Damon privately 3 months earlier, "Your son has the best timing I have ever seen in a student under 18, and I have trained UFC fighters." Damon had nodded and said nothing, and driven home and sat in the parking lot of a Walgreens for 10 minutes processing it. 3 weeks after Marcus came back to the mat, Tyler Greer posted his open challenge video. It appeared on a Thursday evening, 180 seconds of Tyler in his black GI, standing at the center of his academy mat, microphone in hand, working the camera with the ease of someone who had been doing this long enough to stop noticing the lens. Every first Friday of the month, Greer's Combat Academy opens the mat to anyone who thinks they've got what it takes. $500 to anyone who can last 60 seconds with me. Any age, any belt, any gym. A pause, a smile. And hey, we've got a special invitation this month. The Webb family's been real quiet lately. Marcus, if you're watching this, you're welcome here anytime. My mat's always open, especially for you." He looked straight into the camera for 3 full seconds before cutting the clip. 300,000 views by Friday morning. Damon watched it alone at the kitchen table at 11 at night. He watched it twice. Then he set the phone face down and looked at the wall. Sandra came downstairs for water, found him there. She looked at his face and didn't ask what he was watching. "You're not going to let Marcus do it," she said. Damon was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not going to stop him," he said. They heard footsteps on the stairs. Marcus appeared in the kitchen doorway in his socks and a t-shirt, hair pressed flat from the pillow. He looked at both his parents. Then he looked at the phone face down on the table. "I already saw it," he said. "I want to do it." He looked at his father. "Not for you, not because of what he said to me. For me. Because I'm ready, and I know I'm ready, and I don't want to spend 4 more years knowing that and doing nothing about it." The kitchen was very still. Damon picked up his phone and called Coach Sutton. It was 11:17 at night. Sutton picked up on the second ring. "I know why you're calling," Sutton said. "I already watched it. Is he ready?" A pause. The weight of a coach measuring everything he knew against everything he was being asked to confirm. "Come to the gym tomorrow, 6 a.m. I'll show you what I see." Damon came at 6. He stood at the back of the basement for 90 minutes and watched his son move. At 7:30, Sutton walked over and stood beside him. "Sign him up," he said. The first Friday of November was cold and clear. Greer's Combat Academy had been building toward open challenge night all week. Tyler had posted 3 countdown videos. His team had set up additional lighting for the live stream. A local sports drink company, one of his sponsors, had sent a branded banner that now hung above the main mat, red and white, 12 feet wide. The front desk was selling Academy merchandise from a folding table by the door. The DJ booth was set up in the far corner, bass already thumping when the doors opened at 6:30. By 7 o'clock, 250 people filled the gym. Tyler had invited 2 local high school wrestling coaches and a sports journalist from a regional outlet. He had arranged for a referee, a man named Phil Garrett, who had worked Greer Academy events for 3 years and whose neutrality was in the community taken largely on faith. Janelle Price arrived early. She had been covering local sports for the Greensboro Gazette for 6 years, and she had a particular attention to stories that lived beneath the surface of the official version. She had filmed the showcase in March. She had watched the case number on the commission portal go unchanged for weeks. She had made 2 calls to Tyler's publicist that went unreturned. She sat in the second row with her camera on a small tripod angle, locked recording from the moment the doors opened. She had also quietly suggested to 3 colleagues that they might want to be present tonight. Damon and Sandra arrived with Marcus at 6:45. They sat in the third row center. Sandra had her hands folded in her lap and her chin level and her eyes forward, the posture of a woman who had decided that composure was the most powerful thing she could bring into this room tonight. Damon sat with his elbows on his knees watching the mat. Marcus sat between them in his white GI. His GI bag was under his seat. His belt was tied flat, even ends. He had eaten a light dinner at 5, done 30 minutes of gentle movement at home, and said almost nothing since they left the house. In the truck, when Sandra had asked him how he felt, he had said ready, without looking up from his hands. Coach Sutton entered the gym at 6:58 and stood in the back row, arms crossed. He carried a stopwatch on a lanyard around his neck, the same analog stopwatch he had used for 46 years. He did not sit down. He chose the spot closest to the exit and furthest from the cameras, the spot from which a man who has seen everything watches something he has spent 4 years preparing for. Tyler dispatched the first 2 challengers with efficient contempt. A college wrestler, 22 years old, big through the chest, Tyler sprawled on his shot, took his back, finished a rear-naked choke in 28 seconds. The crowd roared. Tyler stood over the young man, with his arms out, already feeding the room. A blue belt from a gym in Winston-Salem came in, aggressive, pressuring forward. Tyler pulled guard, swept him in 4 seconds, mounted, finished an Americana in 31. More roaring. Tyler grabbed the microphone. "That's what this mat does to people who think they're ready," he said. 2 down. Who's next? He looked around the room. Let the silence build for effect. "Come on. $500, 60 seconds. Somebody in here has something to prove." Jake Simmons at the registration table called the next name. M. Webb. The room shifted before Marcus stood up. People recognized the name. Not all of them, but enough. Enough phones went up. Enough faces turned. The murmuring spread through the bleachers like a current finding its level. Marcus stood, straightened his GI, and walked to the edge of the mat. He was 14 years old, 5'4", 122 pounds. The room did not know what to make of him. Several people laughed, not cruelly, just reflexively, the way people laugh at something that doesn't compute. A kid, a white belt kid, walking toward a 41-year-old man who had just choked out a college wrestler. Tyler stared at Marcus for a long moment. Then he picked up the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice was warm, performative, completely in control. "The famous Webb family has decided to join us tonight." He smiled at the crowd. "Marcus, you've grown." He looked him up and down. "Couple inches anyway." Laughter. "You sure about this, son? There's no shame in watching from the bleachers. That's what I recommended 4 years ago." Marcus said nothing. In the back row, Sutton looked at his stopwatch. "Not yet." just holding it. Tyler set the microphone down. He rolled his neck. He walked to the center of the mat, bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet, playing to the phones, the cameras, the banner, the 250 people who had come here tonight to see exactly this. He had already decided how this would go. He would control the boy, hold him down, let the clock run, not hurt him, just dominate him completely, and let 60 seconds make his point for him. Clean, public, definitive. Phil Garrett raised his hand. Fighters ready. Marcus stepped onto the mat. Begin. Tyler moved forward with his hands low casual, the posture of a man expecting no resistance. He reached for Marcus's collar with his right hand, the same lazy opening grip he used on every beginner. Marcus did not step back. His left hand caught Tyler's right sleeve at the wrist. His right hand found the back of Tyler's collar. His hips dropped in one sharp, connected movement, and he pulled guard, not a fall, not a stumble, a snap, precise and sudden, breaking Tyler's posture forward and down before Tyler's nervous system had fully registered that the match had started. Tyler stumbled into Marcus's closed guard. His hands hit the mat. His chin dropped. His smile was gone. 3 seconds in, Marcus opened his guard. Left foot pressed to Tyler's right hip. Right leg swung in a clean arc over Tyler's left shoulder and locked behind his neck. Tyler's right arm was still trapped at the wrist. Marcus's ankles crossed and his knees clamped. Triangle choke. Every angle correct. The kind of execution that gets replayed in instructional videos. 7 seconds and Tyler's face darkened. He tried to stack, drove forward, tried to lift Marcus's hips to relieve the pressure. Marcus had already angled off to the right. He pulled the trapped arm across his center line, tightened his legs, and pulled Tyler's head down with his left hand. Tyler's right hand slapped the mat. Once. Phil Garrett did not move. 10 seconds in, Tyler tried to posture one final time. Marcus pulled his head down hard. The choke deepened past the point of recovery. Sutton pressed the stopwatch. 11 seconds on his clock when Tyler's body went slack. Janelle Price's camera read 13 seconds when Tyler's eyes closed and his weight fell. Marcus released the choke, pushed Tyler's unconscious body to the side, stood up. 250 people. Not one sound. Not the DJ, not the sponsor banner, not the phones. Nothing. Just the hum of the fluorescent lights above the mat, and Tyler Greer face down, still, while his staff rushed forward with water. Then one person clapped. Then 5. Then the room came apart at the seams. Sutton stopped his stopwatch, looked at the face. 11 seconds. He looked up at Marcus standing in the center of the mat, completely still, breathing through his nose. In the third row, Sandra Webb had both hands over her mouth. Damon had not moved. He was looking at his son, and his eyes were wet, and he made no effort to hide it. Marcus looked at his father once. Then he walked off. The mat sat back down in his chair in the third row and picked up his GI bag. He had not taken the $500. He had not said a single word. When a reporter from the regional outlet approached him 30 seconds later, Marcus looked up at him calmly. "How long was that?" the reporter asked. 13 seconds, Marcus said. "Maybe 11. A pause. "I wasn't counting. I was finishing." Janelle Price was already uploading. Her title gym owner told a 10-year-old black boy not to cry. The boy came back at 14. By 9 a.m. the next morning, the video had 500,000 views. By end of day, 3 million. Hashtag 13 seconds was trending in North Carolina by noon. And Tyler Greer, who had regained consciousness after 20 seconds and been helped to a chair by his staff, sat in his office at 11 that night, staring at his phone with 37 missed calls and a notifications column that would not stop loading. He called Brett Coleman at midnight. "I need you," he said, "tonight." Brett Coleman was a media strategist who had managed reputation crises for two politicians and a regional bank executive. He answered on the third ring and said, "I saw the video. Give me until morning." Tyler hung up and sat in the dark. He should have read that stopwatch more carefully. Both of them. By Saturday morning, the world had opinions. The video Janelle Price uploaded had passed 3 million views before most of Greensboro finished breakfast. By Sunday evening, it was at 8 million. The comment section was a living organism, part celebration, part fury, part frame-by-frame technical analysis from jiu-jitsu practitioners across 4 continents, breaking down every second of Marcus's triangle choke with the devotion of people who understood exactly what they were watching. That entry was cleaner than most black belts I've seen. The angle off after the stack attempt. That's not beginner technique. That's years. Someone trained that kid right. Hashtag 13Seconds. The hashtag spread the way the best hashtags spread organically because it contained something true. It showed up on Twitter, on TikTok, on Reddit threads in 3 different martial arts forums. A UFC commentator with 4 million followers reposted the clip with one-word textbook. A former Olympic wrestler called it the most composed performance under pressure he had seen from a youth competitor in a decade. Marcus did not see any of it. Damon had taken his phone Saturday morning and told him to rest. Marcus slept until noon, ate lunch, and went to the garage to shoot free throws alone for 2 hours. Sandra watched him through the kitchen window and said nothing. Tyler Greer was not resting. Brett Coleman arrived at the academy at 7 Saturday morning with a legal pad, a laptop, and the particular focused energy of a man who charged $400 an hour and intended to earn it. They sat in Tyler's office with the blinds down for 3 hours. When Brett left, Tyler had a plan. By Sunday afternoon, Tyler was sitting across from a camera at a local television studio, composed, navy-collared shirt hands folded on the desk. What happened Friday night was not a sporting event, he said. It was a setup. Somebody put a 14-year-old child up to this, a child with years of professional-level training, and sent him into what was supposed to be a casual community event without disclosing his background. That's not competition. That's an ambush. He paused, and everybody watching knows exactly what kind of family does something like that. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. The implication landed in living rooms across Greensboro like a brick through a window. Calculated. Deniable. Precise. The local affiliate ran the segment Monday morning. The headline across the bottom of the screen read, "Local gym owner speaks out after viral video controversy." A cable news panel spent 8 minutes debating whether Damon Webb had exploited his minor son for social media attention. One panelist used the phrase, orchestrated provocation. Another said the real question was whether youth participants should be required to disclose training backgrounds before open challenge events. Nobody on the panel mentioned what Tyler had said to a 10-year-old boy 4 years ago. Janelle Price watched the segment from her desk at the Gazette and felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had seen this before, the way a story gets inverted, the way the person with the resources and the platform and the media strategist gets to define the frame, while the person without those things has to live inside it. She opened her laptop and started making calls. The first call was to the NC State Athletic Commission. She asked about Tyler Greer's black belt credentials. The person on the phone gave her a public records number and told her to submit a formal request. She submitted it before hanging up. The second call was to Hector Navarro in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. She found his number through a jiu-jitsu gym directory. He picked up on the fourth ring. She identified herself, explained what she was working on, and asked one question. "Did you promote Tyler Greer to black belt?" A pause on the line, long enough to be its own answer. Tyler trained with me for maybe 7, 8 months. Good athlete. Hard worker. He left as a 2-stripe blue belt. Another pause. I saw that he was calling himself a black belt online a couple years after he left. I didn't say anything because I didn't want the trouble. But no, I never promoted him. That belt didn't come from me. Janelle wrote every word down. Her third call was to a man named Marcus Dunn, Tyler's former assistant instructor, who had left the academy 14 months ago. She reached him on his cell phone. He was quiet for a long moment after she explained why she was calling. I signed an NDA when I left, he said. I'm not asking you to violate it. I'm asking if there's anything you can tell me on the record. Another long silence. I can tell you that I personally witnessed training logs being altered to change student win-loss records before they were submitted to the county for grant reporting purposes. I can tell you I raised it internally and was told to let it go. And I can tell you that 2 weeks after I raised it, my hours were cut to 0. He paused. That's on the record. You can use my name. Janelle had 3 sources, documented quotes, and a commission records request in motion before Monday noon. Then Tyler posted one more video. This one ran 90 seconds. He stood in front of the academy, arms crossed, speaking directly to the camera, with the flat effect of a man who had run out of warmth and was running on calculation. I want to say something to the Webb family directly. What you did was wrong. You used your son. You used this community. And you used me. He looked into the lens. That kid was coached to come in there and injure me. Somebody put a 14-year-old up to this. That's not sports, that's a setup. He let one beat pass. And everybody watching knows exactly what kind of family does something like that. He posted it at 4 in the afternoon. By 8 that evening, it had been viewed 600,000 times. By 9 that evening, the comment section had turned on him, because Janelle Price had published her article at 6. Greer's Combat Academy owner's black belt credentials questioned by claimed instructor. The Gazette piece was careful sourced and precise. It quoted Navarro directly. It quoted Dunn on the record. It noted that 4 jiu-jitsu governing bodies had no record of Tyler Greer's black belt promotion. It noted that the commission had received a formal records request. #FakeBelt appeared in the comments beneath Tyler's video within the hour. By midnight, it was the top trending term in North Carolina. Tyler's phone rang at 12:45. It was Brett Coleman. "We have a problem," Brett said. Tyler stared at the ceiling of his office phone against his ear, listening to the silence on the other end of the line that meant his strategist had run out of strategy. "I know," Tyler said. The lawsuit arrived by certified mail on a Wednesday. Tyler Greer versus Damon R. Webb, filed in Guilford County Civil Court. Claim defamation causing material financial harm. Damages sought $180,000. The filing alleged that Damon's social media posts about the illegal hold at the March showcase had been presented as fact when they were in Tyler's characterization opinion, and that the resulting public attention had directly caused membership cancellations, sponsor withdrawals, and reputational damage to a legitimate business. Damon read it at the kitchen table on a Thursday morning before work. He read it twice. Then he called Janelle Price, not because she was a lawyer, but because she was the person who had been closest to the truth of this from the beginning, and he didn't know who else to call at 7:15 in the morning. Janelle listened. Then she said, "I know a pro bono attorney. She handles exactly this kind of case. Give me 2 hours." Her name was Carol Reeves. 44 years old, 12 years in civil rights and defamation law. The kind of attorney who kept a folder on her desk of cases she took for free because she believed someone had to. She reviewed the filing that afternoon, called Damon at 6, and spoke for 11 minutes without pausing. "His case is structurally weak. Your posts cited a specific rule violation and attached video evidence. That is not defamation, that is documented public commentary on a matter of public concern. His own waiver for the open challenge event and his own public invitation to Marcus undercut his position further. A pause. But weak cases still cost money to defend. That's why he filed it. He's not trying to win in court. He's trying to drain you. Can we counter? We can do better than counter. I have 3 things I want to bring to the hearing. Be at my office. Sunday morning, 8 a.m. Bring everything you have. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks later. Guilford County Courthouse, 2nd floor, courtroom 3. Judge Annette Morrison, presiding, 61 years old, 27 years on the bench. A woman whose courtroom ran on the understanding that precision mattered more than volume, and that she had seen every variety of legal theater and was impressed by none of it. Tyler arrived with his attorney, a man named Douglas Fisk, who carried a leather briefcase and spoke with the measured authority of someone billing at $425 an hour. They took the plaintiff's table. Tyler wore a charcoal suit and a calm expression that had been rehearsed. Damon arrived with Carol Reeves. No suit, dark slacks, a pressed blue shirt, the clothes of a man who worked with his hands and had cleaned up as carefully as he knew how. Sandra sat in the gallery first row. Coach Sutton sat beside her. Janelle Price was 2 seats down with a press badge and a notebook. Behind them, 8 rows filled steadily with people Damon did not recognize until he looked more carefully. Parents from the gym community, former Greer Academy students, members of a martial arts advocacy group out of Raleigh that had been following the story since Janelle's article dropped. Kevin Okafor was there. He had driven himself. He was 15 and he had asked his parents for permission, and they had said yes without hesitation. Marcus was not in the courtroom. Damon had decided that. The boy was in school where he belonged. Fisk opened with precision. His client had operated a legitimate business for 11 years. His client had been subjected to a coordinated public campaign, beginning with a formal complaint filed by the defendant, continuing through social media posts, and culminating in a nationally viral video that had directly caused $180,000 in documented losses. He presented membership numbers. He presented sponsor withdrawal letters. He presented Tyler's bank statements showing the revenue decline. Then he paused and looked at the gallery. Your Honor, this case is simple. One man chose to make his private grievance into a public spectacle, and a business, a real business, that employed real people and served this community's children paid the price. Judge Morrison looked at Carol Reeves. Counselor. Carol stood. She did not have a briefcase. She had a manila folder and a laptop. Your Honor, Mr. Webb posted a video and 2 written statements citing a specific rule, NC Youth Athletics Commission Guidelines. Section 4, Paragraph 7, that prohibits the exact hold used on his 10-year-old son during the March showcase. He attached the footage. He attached the rule book. That is not defamation. That is a citizen using publicly available documentation to report a safety concern. She opened the folder. We have 3 items for the court. She submitted Janelle Price's original unedited footage. The hold was visible, clear, unambiguous. She submitted the commission guidelines with the relevant section highlighted. Then she looked at Judge Morrison. We'd like to call a witness. Fisk looked up. Coach Raymond Sutton. Sutton walked from the gallery to the stand with the unhurried movement of a man who had spent 46 years being patient. He sat, adjusted his posture, and looked at Carol Reeves directly. His testimony took 11 minutes. He established his credentials, 46 years, in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, coral belt, 6th degree, direct lineage documented, and verifiable promotions certified by 4 governing bodies. He explained the belt system. He explained what a legitimate black belt required. Then Carol asked the question. In your professional knowledge, is Tyler Greer's black belt legitimate? Fisk was on his feet. Objection. Foundation. He's a 46-year coral belt with certified lineage, Carol said. I'd say the foundation is established. Judge Morrison looked at Fisk. Overruled. Answer the question. Sutton looked at Tyler Greer across the courtroom. Tyler looked at the table. No, Sutton said. It is not. I contacted 3 governing bodies after seeing his promotion online 5 years ago. None had a record of it. His claimed instructor, Hector Navarro, has stated on record that Tyler left his program as a 2-stripe blue belt. A blue belt and a black belt are separated by approximately 8 to 10 years of verified mat time. Tyler Greer has one, not the other. He reached into his jacket and produced a folder. 46 years of my own documentation. Every belt, every instructor, every student I promoted. It is available for the court's review. The courtroom was absolutely still. Fisk leaned to Tyler and whispered something urgent. Tyler's jaw was tight. His knee had been bouncing under the table for the last 4 minutes, and now it stopped, which was somehow worse. Judge Morrison reviewed the folder for 90 seconds. Then she set it down and removed her glasses. Mr. Fisk, your client organized a public event, drafted a participation waiver containing no restrictions on skill level or training background, publicly invited the defendant's minor son by name on social media, and is now seeking damages for the outcome of that invitation. She looked at Tyler directly. The hold used on a 10-year-old child in March of this year is documented, visible, and in violation of the commission guidelines your client agreed to comply with as a registered youth program operator. She picked up her gavel. Claim dismissed. I am issuing a formal referral to the NC State Youth Athletics Commission to conduct a full investigation into Greer's Combat Academy, including instructor credential verification, youth safety practices, and grant reporting accuracy. The gavel came down once. Fisk packed his briefcase in silence. Tyler sat at the plaintiff's table for a long moment, after everyone else had begun to move. Outside the courtroom, Damon stood in the corridor, with his back against the wall, eyes closed, just breathing. Carol put a hand on his arm. It's done. Is it? She thought about it honestly. The court part is. Damon's phone buzzed. A text from Sandra, who had already walked outside. Check Twitter. #FakeBelt was the #1 trend in North Carolina. The commission inspectors arrived on a Monday morning, 2 of them clipboards and lanyards pulling into the Greer's Combat Academy parking lot at 9:15. The glass storefront was dark. The 12-foot sign above the door was still lit, that red and white glow that Tyler had paid $140,000 to install, but the door was locked, and when the inspectors pressed their faces to the glass, the trophy case inside was empty. Tyler Greer had removed the trophies the night before. Nobody knew where he went after that. The inspectors used the authority granted by the commission's formal referral to enter the premises with building management. What they found inside took 4 hours to document. Training logs that did not match incident reports. 3 separate instances recorded in the logs as routine sparring sessions that corresponded with dates when parents had later reported injuries requiring medical attention. Youth participants paired with adult training partners 2 and 3 times their body weight, with no documentation of parental consent for full contact sessions. A first aid kit on the wall, with a 2021 expiration date on half its contents. No certified first aid personnel on the instructor roster. Grant reporting documents listing 4 certified black belt instructors. The academy had 1, and his certification was now formally under review. The commission suspended Greer's Combat Academy's operating license that afternoon, pending full investigation. The suspension was permanent within 6 weeks. The doors stayed locked. The sign stayed on for 3 more days before someone from building management switched it off. The DJ booth in the corner collected dust. The branded sponsor banner, red and white, 12 feet wide, hung above an empty mat until the building owner reclaimed the space in January. Tyler Greer's Instagram account, which had held 90,000 followers the morning after the Open Challenge night, dropped to 22,000 in the first 2 weeks after the hearing. It dropped to 11,000 by the end of the month. His sponsors moved quickly. 4 of them issued public statements within 48 hours of the commission referral. The careful corporate language of organizations protecting themselves from association. His merchandise company sent a contract termination letter by registered mail. The weekend seminars refunded every outstanding registration automatically. 4 families filed formal complaints with the commission on behalf of their children. 2 filed civil suits. A former student posted a detailed account on Reddit, 14 paragraphs, specific dates, specific incidents that received 62,000 upvotes and was shared across 3 national martial arts forums. Brett Coleman quietly removed Tyler Greer from his client list. No statement, no explanation, just a name no longer appearing on the agency website one morning. Tyler Greer left Greensboro. Some people said Charlotte. Some said out of state. Nobody who mattered to this story spent much time thinking about where he went. The faded rectangle on the storefront wall where his sign had been was the only monument his 11 years in that building left behind. Damon Webb went back to work the Monday after the hearing. Same truck, same routes, same crawl spaces and rooftops. His union issued a written confirmation that the complaint against him had been found without merit, with back pay for every day of the suspension. The letter was 3 paragraphs. He folded it and put it in the kitchen drawer next to the notepad, where he had written down what Marcus said at age 8 about heroes who keep going when everything says stop. Sandra's contract was renewed without incident. Principal Alvarez stopped her in the hallway the week after the hearing and said simply, "I'm glad this resolved the way it did." Sandra nodded and said thank you and went back to her classroom and her reading corner and her beanbag chair and her poster about children being stories waiting to be told. She believed it more than ever. Marcus went back to training Tuesday and Thursday. He did not give interviews. When a journalist from a national sports outlet reached out to Damon requesting access, Damon asked Marcus. Marcus thought about it for 2 days and then said, "Not yet. Maybe when there's something worth talking about besides 13 seconds. Damon relayed that verbatim. The journalist wrote it down and published it, and it was somehow the most quoted line of the entire story. Coach Sutton expanded. A second location opened 4 months after the hearing, a converted warehouse space on the east side of Greensboro, twice the size of the church basement, with proper lighting and new mats, and a sign above the door that Sutton had painted himself in careful block letters, Sutton Jiu-Jitsu. Established 1978. All welcome. The Webb family contributed to the build-out through a community fundraiser that raised $11,000 in 3 weeks. Damon installed the HVAC himself. Sandra organized the open house. Marcus mopped the mats the night before the first class. A new ordinance passed Guilford County 4 months after the hearing. Mandatory credential verification for all youth combat sports instructors. Minimum certification standards for youth programs. Parental consent requirements for full contact sessions. Weight class restrictions for minors in mixed-age sparring. Background checks for all coaching staff. The county called it the Webb Standard. Damon heard about the name from Sandra, who had seen it in the Gazette. He was quiet for a long time after she told him. Then he said they should have called it the Marcus Standard. Sandra said same thing. Kevin Okafor won his first regional tournament 6 months after the hearing at 16 years old. He won by submission in the second round, a clean armbar from guard that his coach had drilled into him so many times it came out automatic. When he stepped off the podium, the first person he looked for was Marcus, who was standing at the edge of the mat, with his arms crossed, and a look on his face that was not quite a smile but was something better. "Was it clean?" Marcus asked. "You tell me. You saw it." "It was clean," Marcus said. Kevin nodded like that was the only review that mattered. Marcus was 15 now. He trained 6 days a week. He had competed in 3 tournaments since the Open Challenge night, winning 2 and losing 1 in a final round match that he discussed with Coach Sutton for 45 minutes afterward, not with frustration, with the analytical focus of someone cataloging information for the next time. He did not talk about 13 seconds. When people asked him about it at school, at the gym, in the grocery store, with his mother once, he always gave the same answer. The 13 seconds weren't the hard part. Every day my dad sat home without pay was the hard part. Every morning my mom drove to school, not knowing if her job was safe, was the hard part. I just finished it, when he said it simply, without performance. The way you say something when you believe it completely. The last Tuesday in March, exactly 1 year after the showcase, Marcus drove himself to Coach Sutton's church basement gym. He had his license 2 months, still treated every drive like a test. He parked, went downstairs, changed, and found Sutton already on the mat running a solo drill. They rolled for an hour. No audience, no cameras, no hashtags. When they finished, Marcus sat on the edge of the mat with sweat on his forehead and his water bottle between his knees. Sutton sat beside him. "Your dad would have been a good training partner," Sutton said. Marcus looked at him. "He was never into jiu-jitsu." "No, but he showed up every time. That's the hardest technique to learn." Sutton looked at the wall. "Most people never get it." Marcus thought about the kitchen table, the folder labeled evidence, the certified mail, the 2-hour drive to a courthouse in dress clothes, his father's hands on the steering wheel in the dark parking lot of a gym that had tried to swallow them whole. "He got it," Marcus said. Sutton nodded once. Outside, Greensboro was doing what it always did, neither Charlotte nor Raleigh. Just itself, wide streets and old neighborhoods and a city still deciding what it wanted to be. Marcus Webb drove home in the dark with the radio off, thinking about nothing in particular, which is what it feels like when the weight you have been carrying finally puts itself down. He was 15 years old. He was just getting started. The mat never lies. It does not care about your title, your followers, your sign above the door. It only asks one question: who showed up and who was ready when they got there. Marcus Webb didn't win in 13 seconds. He won over 4 years of showing up when he had every reason not to. That kind of winning doesn't trend. It lasts. If this story hit something real in you, drop a comment. Tell me about the moment you finished something that someone told you couldn't be done. Share this with one person who needs to hear it today. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe, because the ones who keep going deserve to be remembered.